The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund completed its first review under the 48-month Extended Fund Facility arrangement. According to the IMF, the completion of the first review allows for an immediate disbursement of about $337 million, bringing the total IMF financial support disbursed so far to about $670 million. Addressing a media briefing this morning on Sri Lanka's first review under the extended arrangement under the Extended Fund Facility, IMF Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, commented on the success achieved by Sri Lanka during the first review.
Sri Lanka's performance under the program was satisfactory. All quantitative performance criteria for end June were met, except the one on expenditure areas, and all indicative targets were met, except the one on tax revenues. These macroeconomic policy reforms are starting to bear fruit, and the economy is showing signs of stabilization with rapid disinflation, significant revenue-based fiscal adjustment, and reserves buildup. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka should continue to focus on the multi-pronged disinflation strategy to safeguard the credibility of its inflation targeting regime. Accumulating reserves, supported by exchange rate flexibility, implementing the bank recapitalization plan, and strengthening the financial supervision and crisis management frameworks are crucial to safeguarding financial sector stability. Commendably, Sri Lanka has also reached important milestones in putting debt on the path towards sustainability. Sri Lanka's agreements in principle with the Official Creditor Committee and the Export-Import Bank of China on debt treatments are consistent with the program targets. It is now important for Sri Lankan authorities and the official creditors to sign the respective memoranda of understanding. Timely implementation of the agreements, together with reaching a resolution with external private creditors, should help restore Sri Lanka's debt sustainability over the medium term. We are projecting that next year there will be positive growth. There are signs that all these reforms are paying off, but clearly the economy is not yet out of the woods. A lot more reforms need to happen, and sustaining this reform momentum is really key for the economy to safely emerge from the crisis. So we're projecting a turnaround to positive growth of 1.8 next year.
At a time when the people in the country are facing a lot of trouble, do you think increasing tax revenues could put further burden on them?
Raising revenue continues to be of paramount importance in Sri Lanka. Despite all these measures that have been taken, there's still a long road ahead to get revenue to a level where the expenditures can be supported. And yes, we are cognizant that VAT is not an optimal tax. It would be more desirable to have a more progressive tax system in place. But despite the tax reforms last year, there have been small shortfalls in tax collection. And so in a situation like that, one has to look into second best options. And so raising the VAT is one of those. Now, that VAT rate is not unprecedented, but over the medium term, it will in fact be advisable to look into other measures for a more progressive tax.
What would be a rough timeline for the second review of the program?
We would expect that these official sector agreements in principle are turned into agreements by the time of the second review, and also that agreements have been reached with the commercial creditors. We would travel back to Sri Lanka next year and expect the second review could be concluded by the end of the first half of the year. Again, it depends on developments on the ground, but we expect to travel to Sri Lanka sometime in March or April and then conclude the review perhaps 2 months after that.
You mentioned that the second tranche or part of the funding from the second tranche could be used for refinancing of the banking sector. Could you give us an indication of what amount can be used as part of that refinancing?
IMF financing is provided as budget support, so then it's up to the government of how they allocate these funds and where they go to. In principle, they help in terms of bringing more foreign exchange in Sri Lanka. More broadly, to give a sense of scale, we've allocated about 6% of GDP in terms of bank recapitalization. The size of the current tranche that's provided following the board meeting today is about 0.5% of GDP. So the needs are a little bit higher than what the current tranche has.